Welcome to the MuseCast, where we squeeze every last drop of inspiration out of Sunday's sermon.
Oh!
Hey, we did it. We did it.
Didn't do it.
Yes, we did. Well, we did it until you started laughing.
You were cranking your desk, and so I thought we had a more of a moment before it was gonna record.
Well, I wanted to get our heads aligned.
So, are we?
Yeah,
are we good now?
Yeah, pretty close.
Okay.
I think it's pretty close.
Okay.
So
my head's, is it bigger than yours? My hair is a lot of times.
I think
than yours.
Our heads are both about the same size. They look proportional. Okay. Neither one of us looks too freaky, so that's good.
Okay, that's important. That's important.
Yes,
well,
I agree.
Happy Muse Day.
It's so professional.
We are so. I mean, it takes a lot to be this professional, to have this high a quality of a show, and so you guys are welcome. He's Dan Kent. I'm Shawna Boren, and this is the MuseCast. So happy Muse Day, one and all. And I'm in a good mood, Dan Kent, because the sun is shining. It feels so nice.
I agree.
Lovely. I don't like it. I don't like that since I have become a Minnesotan, and I consider myself a Minnesotan now because I've lived here for like 20 years. My mood is impacted by the weather, and I don't like it. Or maybe that's my old age. I don't know, but that's just the way it is.
I don't know. You might technically be a Minnesotan, but you were saying y'all this morning and some other Texasisms. So you still have some work to do. You have opportunities for growth.
I do have opportunities for growth. And can I just say, okay, this is me being very vulnerable. John 10:10 is a passage that whenever I have to say it, my brain, here I go. Steal, kill, destroy. I have to ensure that I say steal. See, I say steal a little twangy.
Yeah.
And so my brain is always like, don't be twangy, don't be twangy. And so then I'll say steal, kill, destroy, steal. Yeah. So I get a little like.
There's a lot going on in your head that most people don't even know about. You know, they see you walking down this street. They think, no, here's a normal lady. No, no, madness. This is madness.
At all. Just pure. Yeah. So anyway, we are we are in the home stretch of Wholehearted. And it's been a good little break from Revelation, but I'm here to tell you guys that in a meeting with our teaching team this morning, Dan Kent was holding up the Revelation resources. He's like, I'm ready to get back at it, guys. We're just like, okay.
Yeah.
You are ready for that.
I'm ready. Yeah. But we still have Wholehearted to finish, and I'm still focused there. Also, before I do the sermon, let me just say that I'm pro y'all. Okay, that it gets my vote. I think that should be a national thing. So, yeah, I
concur. I think all y'all are welcome to say y'all because it's efficient. It's super
second
efficient.
Second person plural. We need that. So,
there you go.
There you go. All right, should I do my summary?
Do your summary, sir.
We've been doing this show for 5 years. That wasn't a good transition, so we need to work on that.
Well, I'm done. That's what that was.
That's right. All right, I'm doing the summary. This sermon was called Stop and Delight, which I really like that title. I don't even remember what my title is. I have been on a title slump lately, and I need to up my title game. It's been pretty lame lately. So Stop and Delight I thought was a good title. And your week, you're focusing on the fourth direction of love, that love of creation. And this series, of course, is these four directions of love: love of God, love of self, love of other, love of creation. And this week is love of creation. And so you looked originally at our mandate to take care of the earth and the animal kingdom, and because it is good, and God kind of commissions us to take care of that. And so then you ask, okay, well, how are we doing? And not so good. We're not doing so hot at taking care of the earth and the animal kingdom. Part of that is because we are in the middle of this spiritual warfare, but also humanity, because of so many different factors, so many different ways that sin sort of corrupts us, whether it's through, our greed for belongings, our hoarding things, our consuming the earth for industrialization, our capitalist drive for more and more and more, stuff like that, our human-centered worldview, our wastefulness, all of those things has sort of led to God's creation kind of under some pressure. It's not doing so hot, and so then you ask, okay, so we know what our commission is, and now we've given this little report card, and so then the report card turns out bad, so we don't know, well, what can we do? How can we fix our grades? And so you proposed a few different ideas, things like recycling and pre-cycling and thrift shopping and, meatless Mondays and things like that are some of the ideas that you proposed. And I think those are all really good things. And any little thing helps, of course. But I think my favorite part of the sermon was sort of where you went next, where you sort of confessed your own struggles with this, because I think it's when you start to see, like, everybody looks at these ideas, and we all know about recycling. We all know about all these different things, and a lot of people don't do it. And even when they want to, and even myself, I mean, I'm not perfect by any stretch, and I try, and it's something on my values list is to take care of the earth and the animal kingdom. And I think it's when you really start to look at where you're not succeeding, where you're failing, or where there's this great resistance, and you can start to question yourself, like, why is that I'm not doing very good at that? That's when you can start to see different things, like, what from my upbringing has kept me from flourishing at this and doing better at this. And it could be maybe shame, or maybe envy, or maybe who knows what it is. We all have endless amounts of kind of obstacles that can keep us from doing this, but you will never get at that until you set that standard, like, I'm going to take care of the earth and the animal kingdom, and then analyze how you're doing, and then ask yourself why you're not doing as good as you want to be doing. That's how you learn about yourself, and that's how you grow. So that was my favorite part of the sermon. But then you had these practices, and this is where I was sort of waiting with bated breath, like, what kind of practices are we going to do here for love of the earth and the animal kingdom? And I thought the two that you picked, I think it was perfect. I mean, the first one, it was right, and it was good. It could apply to anything, but it's still important, though. And the first one was just having gratitude. And I think that's right about the earth, because I think we take it for granted. And when we're taking something for granted, that means that we're not recognizing its real value, and we're not being grateful for it. And so I thought that was a really good one. And the story about Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong, I didn't know that. That was a cool little story. And then the second practice, which I thought was like really good, and it was this practice, the Sabbath, and just this day of rest, and to really live into this gift of rest, and to prioritize rest as part of your routine, because God created everything with rest sort of built into it, with this need for rest built into it. And you gave some examples of what it looked like when we were forced to rest during the pandemic, and just we could see even during that short amount of time, Earth was sort of healing, and that was sort of the kind of tongue-in-cheek kind of mantra, Earth is healing, and but it was right. There was something true about that, and so I think that really living into how God made us to live also then reflects on the earth and the animal kingdom, and it can help there as well. And so in a weird sense, this second practice is actually about doing less, not doing more. And I think that is, I'm good at doing less, so I should be good at Sabbath. Now I'm not, but that's a whole different story. And part of this is kind of where the title came from of the sermon too, is where we can't stop and delight until we first stop. and we're not going to delight unless we're grateful. And so really those two practices come together in the title, where we have to stop and we have to be grateful enough to delight in everything that God has made. And then you've closed with a psalm, and I didn't know which psalm that is, but it was "Be still and know." And you said, "Let's be still," as a way of kind of tapping into this Sabbath mindset. That is my sermon. There is more in there as well. You talked about how the creation is subjected to frustration and all of that, but I felt like that's how I remembered the gist of your sermon. And really, really great sermon for a topic that's not easy to do a sermon on. And so you knocked it out of the park.
Oh, thanks, Dan. Yeah, I was, because you're a part of the team, and I was sharing with the team during the run through, just this is so not in my wheelhouse. It is just not. And by that, I mean, I think all of us who are a part of the teaching team, we have like little sweet spots that we can, teach and preach on any day of the week. It's just, right, what comes out of us. And this is not mine at all. And that's okay, because I really enjoy being stretched by our teachings. And so it'd be easier if I weren't being so stretched by my own teaching, but there we have it. So that's right. I'm really thankful for the people who have given feedback and just talked about what they're thinking through as a result of the sermon, and the whole thing about gratitude and Sabbath, the spiritual practices that we can enact to love creation better. I really do think, I think in many ways they're very simple, but in other ways they're really complex, because there are things that we just don't always naturally do. And in particular, resting. Now, I know you joke and say you're good at doing less, but I would say as a society, we are so geared to go, 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 and for more, more, and more. And we almost feel guilty if we take a break. And so yeah, it was a challenging week preparing for the sermon, but it was also I felt God's grace and presence throughout the week preparing for the sermon. So
yeah, well, I will say that because Barbara and I were there on Sunday, and Greg was there, and a lot of times when one of us are on stage, Greg is usually doing something else. He's got, he flies around and does things, and then part of it is just that he's up there so much that, sometimes it's nice to watch from home every once in a while, and so it was really nice to have everybody there at the same time for the service, and that was really cool. And I don't know what people could hear on YouTube, but he was getting into the word there. I mean, he was getting into your message. He was.
He was.
A lot of amens and you betches and all that.
Absolutely.
I didn't hear any y'alls, but he was shouting for sure. So
yeah, he's a work in progress. We'll get him to say y'all.
That's right.
One thing that I wanted to. Is this a good time? Because we did get an email that I would love to talk about. And that is, and we say this all the time, whenever we are delivering a sermon, we have essentially 30 to maybe 40 minutes, but really around 30-ish minutes to give all the content. And you and I come on this show every week and we talk about like what got left on the cutting room floor, what did we have to, take out, or what did we want to talk more about? And that's always, always, always the case. And it's also, I think, many times the case that you say things as an example, and then there can always be like examples that counter that you don't get to say. And so, for instance, when I was talking about some of the contributing factors as to why the earth is groaning, why creation is sick and not healthy and not in alignment with God's original ideal, I, of course, talked about principalities and powers and the spiritual warfare that we're in. And then I just said, but also humans have had a significant contribution to the state of creation, and that's just the reality of it. And in that, I just gave a few examples, and I mentioned factory farming, and I also mentioned domestic and breeding. And anyway, I want to say that, and I did not say this on Sunday. There wasn't time
Mhm.
for it, but I want to say that I am so thankful for farmers and the people that toil our land and provide our food. And I am married to a farmer, and so it is hard work, and I am incredibly, profoundly grateful. And when I said that factory farms have been a detriment, that is true. But that doesn't mean that every single farm has
Right.
been a detriment. I know that there are farmers and that farm their land ethically and
Mm.
responsibly. I know that, and so that didn't get said. And there was some feedback that maybe that was missed, and so I just wanted to address that.
Yeah.
Just the same with, like, I know that there are breeders who do that ethically,
Mhm.
and I think I'm kind of stumbling over my words. I did not say that, but it doesn't mean that it's not true. I think both things are true. Like,
Yeah.
yes, industrialized farms and factory farms,
Yeah.
some of them, many of them, don't do
Yeah.
things ethically. And then there are many that do. And so that didn't get said, but I wanted
Right.
to clear the air a little bit there.
Well, and I think, and I agree with you, and I think part of the another way of saying this is like because factory farms are so detrimental, farming is actually more important. Farming is more precious. Like if you are,
Yeah.
the term husbandry means this kind of steadfast care for your animals and for your land, and that's even more important. And so like that's where I think of like because I came from dairy farmer. And my
Mm-hmm.
family going back with dairy farmers. Then my mom married into a vegetable farm family,
Mm.
so I've experienced both, and I know those struggles and those challenges, and I've worked the field, and I've weeded fields and pulled bushels of tomatoes, and it's hard work, and it's important work, and that's how we get food, and but I just think, and I even the worst of the worst, the factory farms, even that. I understand. I mean, we're trying to feed several billion people here, and
Yeah.
and they all want meat. And so how
Right.
do you feed that many people with meat? And eventually it becomes crowded. But even though we have challenges, we should never let go of the standard of taking care of God's creatures, and to love what God calls good. And so I think that's how I would respond to that. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Stan. Yeah. So just like I would say, there are people in the world that maybe even heard the message that are much further along in their journey of creation care than I am. And my hope would be that when they hear a sermon like this, they could know that they're on the right path, and they can encourage those that maybe aren't as far along, and maybe share some of their knowledge of what they know and how they do what they do to care so well for creation. But I think regardless of where we are, we can always grow.
That's
And
right.
I think that's the point. We can always love better.
Hmm.
God, others, self, and creation. We can always love more deeply. And I think that's a part of why we've been doing the series, is just to reflect better
Hmm.
the love of God and the image of God that we reflect out to others. So that's
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, and I think I'll just add one more thing, and that is so much of the imagery that Jesus uses is about farming,
Mm-hmm.
shepherding, and
Mm-hmm.
taking care of your fields and paying your workers fairly and all of that, and I think there's a reason for that, and in none of those uh, does the parable talk about abuse toward animals or abuse of the land. It's always this husbandry, this
Mm-hmm.
compassionate and careful, intentional use of these things, and in a way that is as merciful as possible and as loving as possible. And so, yeah, we have a high standard. We have a high
Yeah.
standard that we're pursuing.
Amen to that. Thank you for just dialoguing that with me a little bit. Hopefully, that is helpful to folks that maybe, had questions or wonderings about that.
Yeah.
One of the things I wanted to talk about on today's show is and this is not, we're not going to go into deep discussion about it. I'm just going to say, like, if you want to study some of this stuff more, I think that has merit because there was so much that couldn't be said. I mean, there is so much. If you ever want to do a study on the way in which we are to have dominion over, that's one of the words that is used throughout Scripture about having dominion over the land and what that looks like, kingdom dominion, kingdom rule. There's a lot that you could be looking at there. Barbara Kent wrote this amazing document that was really rich in scriptures and resources about what that looks like. And doing a deep dive on Sabbath and what all that means for land, for humanity, for the rest of creation. I mean, there's so much there. Of course, you can always say a ton about gratitude, and you're right, that can kind of get stuck. You could stick that with anything and it would be relevant. And so there is always so much more that can be said. And so I just encourage folks, if any of that interests you, you can do some research and check it out. So I referenced this book, Subversive Sabbath. That was a really good one. And I referenced this book, Sabbath as Resistance. It's a way to, resist and fight back and push back the darkness. Another good one. And then the third one that I referenced was this guy. And you, Dan, I think are kind of looking at how we might dig into this a little more for some other series. So The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry, that was a good one. So for y'all's study and pleasure, those are just some of the resources that I found to be helpful this past week in my studies. And there's just a lot of goodness in those resources. So that's my public service announcement.
Yeah, I love book recommendations.
Yes, you do. You do.
Fun.
I felt so happy that I had some to show and recommend. Well, we are. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, before we move on, though, I just want to say really quick that I received a bunch of questions from a couple previous sermons.
Yeah, that's right.
We're a little behind, and so I think what our plan is when next week after our last sermon in this series, we'll do sort of a catch-up session on some of the questions. So if you've sent in questions, we will try to get to them next week.
Yeah, that's actually great minds think alike. And I think maybe we have great minds, but that's where I was going. I was going to say, hey, so we were just talking about how we're kind of in the tail end of this series, and actually the final sermon of this series is this weekend. So Greg is going to close us out. But that also means that there have been questions and stuff and comments that have come in that we hadn't gotten to. And so, we're going to take some time to do that coming up. So stay tuned for that. And I'm excited to close out the series, to hear what Greg has for us. And one thing I want to say is that just because the series is over doesn't mean we put the spiritual disciplines to bed. We need them in our lives all the time. And hint, hint, I don't think this will be the last time y'all hear about the spiritual disciplines. So that's all I'll say about that.
That's good. Does that mean that it is nugget time?
I think it means that. Woo, nugget time.
I feel I feel at a loss because I'm not standing up this week for some reason. You did a seated nugget dance. It's not as good. So man.
Okay. We'll have to take notes for the production team and let them know. Yeah. Dan needs to be standing.
Yeah, the show so far has been a B+, A-. The nugget dance was sort of a C. So okay. So I'll work on that.
Much to work on. Yeah. Good. We have a show next week, so
That's right.
Good. There's always room for improvement.
That's right.
All right. Do you want a nugget first, Dan, or do you want a
Well,
nugget
you get
last?
to choose because it's your sermon. So
Oh, okay. How about I'll just nugget first because I'm going to tap into how I ended this sermon and talking about rest and Sabbath. And I just want to encourage people to allow God to restore and refresh your soul and your spirit. And literally, get out into nature and get out and enjoy creation. Get out and just remind yourselves of the glory and the beauty that is all around. And so I think it's so very important. And this could be, Minnesota, Shawna, cooped up inside when it's been gray and cold, but I still think regardless of the season, it is important to just be appreciative of the beauty that is around us and to remember that and to give yourself space and opportunity to experience that. And that takes time and it takes intention, just as it takes time and intention to rest. And it's going to look different depending on how you're wired and where you live and all that. But it's important that we do take that time to just really rest and allow God to restore within us the things that have just been drained, and to replenish our souls and just to fill us back up. And just it's a way of allowing God to love on us as we express our love to him. And it's a gift. It truly is a gift. Rest is a gift. And so my encouragement is for everyone to take advantage of that. And maybe even just a suggestion, be intentional about scheduling time off, times of rest regularly. I just think it's really important because if we don't intentionally schedule it, then we're not going to make space for it. And we really need to. That's my nugget.
that's awesome. That's great. And that's good advice to schedule it too. And that's part of why maybe I'm not doing a very good job of keeping my Sabbaths. But that is a goal. That has moved up on my list of goals to prioritize. So,
Good. I'm
has.
glad.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
So my nugget is, because I had said you could apply gratitude to anything, and it sounds like I was saying that. Come on, Shawna, you could apply that to anything. But I was actually meaning the opposite, because I was actually saying that, no, it's important to, even though you could apply this anywhere, it's important to also apply it to this because, and this is, I think I mentioned this on Saturday, what I kept thinking about during your sermon, both times I heard it, is that I just think it's a good criteria to ask yourself, are there things that God loves, that God says are good, that I don't care much about? If so, then maybe I'm missing out on something. And that is creation and the animal kingdom is God says this is good. And if I am sort of like, I could do with it or without it, maybe there's an opportunity there to understand it on a new level and to be fed by it on a new level. Now, of course, the nature and the animal kingdom are corrupted and there's sin. And I'm not saying that you should go try to take a selfie with a grizzly bear or anything like that. I'm just saying, like, go, like Shawna said, go out there and I love the research. I think they're called phytocides or something. Trees and plants give off these elements for part of their immune system, and that is really good for us to breathe that in. And so if you've ever walked on a trail through the woods and you just feel that air and it just feels reviving, that's because of these elements that these trees give off, and we're made to be in contact with that, and it reduces our anxiety and it refreshes us. And again, God called it good. He's not gonna, he's a critic that will not let you down. If he says it's good, it's good. And so that's my encouragement is, if you already love nature, well then prioritize it so that you're in contact with it as much as possible. And if you could do without it, well, then maybe this is an opportunity where you could be open to finding refreshment or even finding God in this place. And so that is my nugget.
I love that nugget. So good, Dan. Thank you. All right, guys. That's today's show. We want to thank you for tuning in and for sending in your questions and comments. And should you want to continue to send in your questions or comments, that's right. That's where you do it. MuseCast at whchurch.org. Hey, make sure you tune in this weekend as we close out Wholehearted and then circle back with us next week as we continue that conversation and get to your questions and comments that we haven't thus far. Have a great rest of your week, everyone. Take care.